I had started putting up photos of myself at Dhabas, and I was just sharing them on my Instagram feed and my Facebook feed, and just kind of out of curiosity and also just to see how people would react. And it started some really interesting conversations. But one of the things that happened was that other girls started posting photos of themselves in spaces that are not traditionally associated with women's spaces. And once that happened, we thought, okay, there's something going on here because, if you walk around Karachi or Lahore for that matter, you literally think there are no women because it's just so rare. Like my sister and I have started counting them. It's like 50 to 1, sometimes 25 to 1 maybe. It's very disturbing, but it's so normal that people don't find it disturbing anymore, right? There's a lot of internal fear that we have, which I realize because now I roam around the city all the time and I take all sorts of public transport and everything that I was always warned about when I was younger. And I don't come from an upper class family, I come from a very middle class family. But I was always told, girls don't go do this alone or something will happen to you and something will happen to you. But it's just like if you're never out there, you never really learn how to navigate the streets. Essentially, the group is just about women's participation in public space. And when we say public space, we don't mean shopping malls and we don't mean supermarkets because those are sort of designated curated spaces. They're not public in the same sense. Or like gated communities, which are very common in Pakistan. You have a lot of residential neighborhoods that'll be like, completely walled from the outside and they'll have everything inside like a swimming pool and a market and everything you need. So you don't even need to step out of that community. But that's not a public space. As far as public space goes, it's yeah, in Pakistan it's very gendered, but it's not even a matter of gender anymore. Public space is just generally shrinking for everyone, and even if you're a man, but religion is a big thing here. So if you're a man from a different religion, then you're ousted from public space in different ways. So parks, also shopping malls on weekends, and movies. So if you're a single man, you can't go into a movie without a girl with you or family member. And I have had boys say, what about this and what about our rights and isn't this sexism? And I don't think that such a thing as reverse sexism exists. And I think you have to look at the root of the problem. So the reason single men aren't allowed alone is because so that the place is made more safe for women, right? So again, it isn't discriminatory. It's discriminating against them, yes, but it's also saying that, oh, we need to do this to protect women and sort of take, because their bodies are not their decisions and they are the government and the public decision. In fact, lower class women, also because of the way their houses are built and the way the community lives, right? It's a shared space. It just functions differently. Also because more women are working in the lower class because they have to work, they have more mobility. But the public space gender problem is mostly, I think, middle class and upper class. Vytautas, the book I was telling you about, explains it really brilliantly. They talk about this idea of middle class morality, like the middle class is the one that determines what the sort of moral code of society is. And if you see in Karachi, most of the women who are discouraged from going out, all of this it's a middle class thing very much. This whole idea of respectability and oh, okay, so that woman is from the lower class, so it's okay for her to be out because what. Sorry, I was about to speak in Urdu, but that's also true for men as well because you will see more a larger diversity of men on the streets, but again, you won't see as many upper class men as you see lower class men. So one of the comments we got once was that, you are very visibly, like the way I dress, for example. I'm marked by class by the way I dress, and since I'm very visibly from a middle upper class, I can get away with being in public space, and so it's not a big deal. But then my counter argument to that is, yes, but at the end of the day, just because one woman from an upper class gets away with it doesn't mean that it's a norm, right? I'm still an exception to the norm. And why aren't more women from our community owning their cities? It's your right as a citizen. And why is the upper class and the middle class also creating like these artificial spaces every time they want public spaces? Like in the apartment we live in, it has 6 floors, and there's like it's like tiny. Let me show you actually. So this room, okay, do you get a sense of how small it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a room right next to it. I'll just take you guys on a tour. There's a room right next to it that's the same size, and then this is our lounge, and that's basically it. Hi, Mom.
But there is a living room and a lounge. Hello.
Yeah, there's the living room and the lounge and everything, and there's our dining table here. So it's really a small space, right? It's just like these 3 rooms, and there's a corridor that leads inside. And all of the apartments in this building are like this, and because of the way they're built, right? Even when coming into our own apartment, you have to cross other people's apartments, and the doors are often open, and you kind of see what's going on inside. If somebody wants to have an event, like usually it's like a wedding or something, and they want to set up a tent and stuff, then they'll empty out the parking space again. And the parking space is not like outside, it's in the building, right? It's the basement or the ground floor. I don't know, even corridors are so thin, like maybe wider corridors would make a difference. They do sometimes. I've seen in apartments, we used to live in an apartment before where the corridors were really, really wide, and so they became a sort of hangout space for the children or for the women to sometimes they would just walk. Can you imagine, like, these women were so terrified of walking on the street, the corridor became their, like, walking. So they just take laps around the whole corridor. But it was a wider corridor than usual. The thing with feminism in South Asia is that, the majority of the people don't function in English, right? So the whole discourse of feminism is happening in a very certain class, and even within that class, there are different like groups and NGOs and stuff, but they're also not on the same page about basic feminist goals. Like even abortion would be a huge thing. I'll give you the example of dialogues we've been holding. So we have these monthly, just sort of like in the park or in some public space, we ask people to come and we pick up with some topic and talk about and do some interactive activities. And what has started happening, and this really frustrates us, is a lot of men show up, and we do set some ground rules, but often the conversation, it ends up in the whole getting super self-defensive about experiences. A woman will share something, and then a man will be like, oh, no, this doesn't happen, not all men are like this. And it's like, okay, but that's not the point, at least hear us out, right? And often men take up space that they really need to learn not to. I don't know what our big goal is, and I don't know what we'll be doing a year from now, or if we'll even be existing, hopefully. But we're going to open the Dhaba for sure. We've raised the money for it, so we had a crowdfunding campaign. We run by women, and it's open to everyone. We don't want to segregate. Yeah, no. I think a public space that's segregated would be besides the point, right? That would just be like contradicting everything we've been saying. When I talked about women's only spaces, I don't see those as public spaces. I see those as private, very intimate spaces. Even when we just talk to people like brokers and stuff, like, oh, we need a space because we want to open a Dhaba, they're just like, are you crazy? Like, why? You're not. They just think we're in it for the money or something. They're like, you're not gonna make money from this, because it's a business venture, right? And they're just like, but why don't you do something more profitable? We're like, no. It's not about that.